on similar basis. The people of Ghana could decide who among the two had made a better job of governing our country as president. I know that the NDC presidential candidate, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, believes and says often that Ghanaians have a short memory. And he must hold strongly to this belief. Otherwise, I doubt he would have summoned the courage to be seeking another term after the disaster that was his presidency. Ghanaians might have short memories, but not short enough for us to have forgotten the broken down freezers, irons, and other household equipment thanks to the 5 years of Dumso. Our memories are not short enough to forget that the economy under him was such a wreck that there was a ban placed on all recruitment into our public services. Our memories are not short enough to forget that teachers taught for 3 years and were only paid for 3 months. Our memories are certainly not short enough to forget that he brought our entire financial services system to near collapse. I've heard him make the extraordinary claim that Ghana's economy was in, quote, tatters, not because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but because of mismanagement. I doubt that he can recognize a well-managed economy, even if it slapped him in the face. Luckily for us, we do not have to rely on his judgment or assessment of the economy. But it's important to tell him, just in case there are others like him around, that Ghana is today in a position to be able to provide one hot meal for JHS 3 students who are back in school in the midst of the pandemic, to pay for 6 months the water bills of all Ghanaians, to subsidize the electricity bills of all Ghanaians for 3 months. Indeed, we thank the Almighty that the pandemic did not strike under his presidency, when there was no money in the national kitty to pay teachers and nurses allowances. We are very much aware of the realities of the times. We know the havoc that COVID-19 has wreaked on our economies and livelihoods. I've asked our party members to keep these sensibilities in their minds in all they do as they are about campaigning for votes. Adherence to the COVID-19 protocols means we cannot resort to the traditional methods of campaigning, and I urge all of us to obey strictly these rules. We cannot have the traditional crowds and the rallies, and whenever there are gatherings, we have to try to observe the social distancing rules. It has been said by the NDC presidential candidate that NPP policies lack sense. If running an emerging oil economy into the arms of the IMF because of indiscipline in the management of the public finances is sense, I'm happy that the NPP has another concept of sense. If having sense means cancelling teacher, trainee, and nurses' allowances is sense, I'm happy that the NPP has another concept of sense. If having sense means recording the worst economic management statistics of modern times with the lowest rate of growth of the last 30 years, I'm happy the NPP has another concept of sense. Having sense in the NPP means being able to take an economy growing at 3.4% to an economy that grew, on the average, for 3 successive years, at least 7% per year before the pandemic, and was rightly acknowledged as one of the best performing economies, not just in Africa, but also in the world. Having sense in the NPP means executing the program for planting for food and jobs, which has led to the revival of Ghanaian agriculture from the doldrums of the NDC years, bringing in its wake bumper harvests and affordable food prices in our markets and exports of significant quantities of foodstuffs to our neighbors. Having sense in the NPP means implementing policies which, according to the latest Ghana Living Standards Survey, has resulted in a decline in unemployment rates from 11.9% in 2015 to 7.3% in 2019. I am happy with and prefer the NPP's sense. Let me use this occasion to assure the Ghanaian people that as President of the Republic, I will do everything within my means to ensure the peace and stability of our country in the run-up to, during, and after the polls of 7th December 2020. The struggle of our forebears in the Dankwa Domo Buzia political tradition to construct at great sacrifice a democratic, open, free system of government in Ghana will not be jeopardized by me. And I'm calling on all actors in the political space to join me to ensure the maintenance of the peace and stability of our country and to conduct ourselves in a manner devoid of violence and ethnocentrism. The Ghana project can best be achieved in unity, tolerance, and mutual respect. Fellow Ghanaians, the NPP has in 2020 one target and one objective only, that is to secure, with your support and the blessing of the Almighty, in free, fair, peaceful, and transparent elections, another decisive victory on 7th December 2020. A victory that will give us a clear majority in Parliament and a first-round presidential victory, and enable us to do 4 more years of advancing the peace, progress, and prosperity of our nation for you. We have an excellent message as set out in our manifesto: leadership of service, protecting our progress, transforming Ghana for all. And as eloquently articulated by that brilliant Ghanaian, Mahamadou Bawumia, my most esteemed running mate and vice president, which will protect our progress and continue down the path of social and economic transformation on which all Ghanaians are now embarked. Fellow Ghanaians, the battle remains the Lord's. It is 4 more years for Nana and the NPP to do more for you. May God bless the new patriotic party and us all. And may God bless our homeland Ghana and make it great and strong. I thank you for your attention.
The President has spoken. 4 more years. Let me see your hands raised. Raise your hands in the air. Leadership of service, protecting our progress, total transformation, transforming Ghana for all. thanking God for all his mercies. And we're asking for 4 more to do more. Raise your hands in the air. Let me see your 4 more for Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo. The ushers are coming round with ushers, take the manifesto round now. This is how far the Lord has brought us.
Okay, so we've heard from President Akufo-Addo. He's the candidate for the NPP going into the 2020 elections. And of course, Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the running mates. Dr. Bawumia gave us highlights of the 2020 manifesto, what the NPP is presenting the people of Ghana with, that social contract they want to enter into with the people of Ghana for another mandate come December 7. But for the president, he went straight at his opponent, John Dramani Mahama, and had some replies for him. A number of things John Mahama has been saying on his campaign trail. But Salom, first let's go into some of the things Dr. Bawumia said. What stood out for you?
Well, thanks, Abina. Very interesting presentation. Bawumia did his best to excite the crowd, but it's one thing is very obvious, that being in power is different from being in opposition and making promises. So the 2016 version of their manifesto, in my view, was more exciting than this one, obviously, because they were outside of the field, hoping to enter. When you enter, it's a lot more different. So now you can't just be promising, because when you make promises, people will ask you, what are you doing, because you still have the power. So you can see that we've not had a lot of headlineable policies or programs like we had in 2016, one village, one dam, free SHS, etc. So given everything that I've seen, of course, these are projects or programs or policies to consolidate what they've done in the past 3.5 years. I mean, looking at what we've heard so far, of course, over time, you will have the benefit of having the document properly so we can scrutinize and do proper analysis on the same. But it appears to me that the biggest campaign word or campaign message moving into election 2020 will remain the free SHS, because everything we've heard, the free SHS has come on top. So the document, it said, was in 3 segments. First part on accounting for leadership, performance on the mandate, what they've been able to do with the power people have given them, achievements, etc. Number 2, consolidating the progress, how to consolidate their progress. So, for example, free SHS, how do we move it forward? We've done this, how do we move this forward? The third part will be the acceleration of growth. Their plan for accelerating growth. He talked about the real sector, agric, industrialization, etc. So, key points that stood out for me, his talk about tertiary education. And he did make a good point that there's a direct correlation between tertiary, the percentage of the population with tertiary education and development. That is good. And he cited a South Korean example. I think South Korea is a place that many people have been looked at, but it's a place that we really need to look at. See how their model is and see how they are making it. It's a first world country, you know. So in that country, he says 94% of the population has university education, and that has a direct bearing on their development compared to Ghana, where we have just about 17%. He said that to prepare the ground for what he called affordability of tertiary education, being it private or public. And so the promise or the promise in that is that all tertiary students will get the option of student loan without a guarantor. So just to explain, of course, every student has access to student loan, provided you're able to provide a guarantor.
That's a system now.
That's a system now. It used to be a SNIT system, but now it's a loan scheme program.
The Students' Loan Trust Fund.
Exactly. So now it's moved wholly from SNIT, and a new body, a different body altogether is organizing it or managing it. So what it means is that if you want to have access to the funds, you need to provide, is it 2 or 1 guarantor? I think when I was in school it was 2. I don't know about now. You need to provide 2 guarantors. So they will provide you that guarantee that if you do not pay, we use our social security money, our pension funds to pay. Okay. And because people don't want to toy with that, a lot of people find it difficult in getting guarantors. Now, what they are promising is that if their mandate is renewed, they will take away the hurdle of the guarantor system. I don't know whether this will excite the tertiary people or not, but what remains to be seen is how they intend to claim that money back. Of course, I'm sure by the mention of the national ID system and TIN number, etc., they will find a way around it. He also mentioned the fact that some 290 million was going to be sunk into raising the capacities of some 10,000 schools across the country. What I didn't hear from him was what kinds of schools these are going to be. Are they senior high schools? Are they GHS schools, primary schools, or I don't know. But 10,000 schools appear like it may cut across the spectrum. Anything to improve the education of a country is great. As we've said many times, education is the surest way to get our people out of poverty. And that will also
answer the infrastructure question of the free senior high school
so that hopefully will deal with that aspect of it as well. So they also mentioned that they will build model senior high schools in all the 16 regions of the country in Zongos. So we are expecting to see 16 senior high schools dotted across the country, of course, in all 16 regions, but specifically cited in Zongos. That could mean that they want to focus properly on Zongos. And if you know Zongos, the socioeconomic conditions are not very good. Quite a huge inequality gap exists between the Zongos and general society. So doing so will enable a lot of the people in Zongos who do not have access to education, maybe to go to school. They also mentioned, access to professional legal education. We hope to
expanding the infrastructure,
etc. I don't know if expansion of infrastructure at the Ghana School of Law, where the professional legal education takes place, is the answer to the problem, because there's been talk about decentralizing legal education. People think that is the surest way to go, so you take off that burden from government, because as we speak, a number of schools offer the LLB law program. So once they're able to train people for LLB, it should not be difficult to train them for the professional program, so that the Ghana School of Law, which today administers a professional law program, will only set the bar exam. People say from various schools, once you pass, you call to the bar. So I'm not sure if that kind of investment is the solution. After all, how much space can you create at the Ghana School of Law? And mind you, the Ghana School of Law has a place around the Legon area, and they've been developing that place for the past decade, and they never get to finish because funds are not available. I don't know if that will solve the problem, but I think that the solution, as has been espoused by many experts in the area, is to decentralize it so that many people who want to get into legal practice or legal profession can do that. But that is their solution to the problem, by expanding infrastructure and ensuring that more people get into the free.
You also talk about
the free,
the Wi-Fi,
the free Wi-Fi,
yes. etc. In senior high schools.
I don't know how that works, because as we speak now, there is a policy for SHS people not to take phones and smart gadgets to school. So if I don't have a smart gadget, of what use is free Wi-Fi to me? Unless, of course, they are telling us that they will amend or scrap that policy and make it possible for students at the SHS level to own smartphones and gadgets, etc. But as we speak now, I think that policy being in place and you promising this, I don't just see the connection. It appears that the Vice President, the NPP, is getting ahead of itself. We need to understand why that policy is in place first, and then we can have a discussion on that, whether to scrap it or maintain it. And then if we won't scrap it, then this issue about free Wi-Fi, we'll have to look at it again. A number of things is said also on health, Agenda 111, etc. But the question which has remained that is not been answered is, you have 4 years, you've not built one regional hospital, maybe you've not built a district hospital. You're going to build 111 of these, in the next 4 years. That, they will need some convincing to do when it comes to that. They also talked about expanding access to medical schools. I think similar. I don't know if it could be similar to the legal one, but in the case of a medical school, you need to be in a medical school properly so-called and get trained. And because of the requirement of a teaching hospital, that certainly must be done mainly by government. An interesting point he made about housing, the rent law,
call it the...
I really didn't get that point because
the National Rent Assistance Scheme.
Because there's a rent act, there's a rent law which tells us how things should be. We should not take rent from people for more than 6 months or cumulatively. And it happens elsewhere. I was in the UK. They take like 3 months from you, and maybe they take 3 months and they take an extra month so that in case you damage something in the house or in the room, that money could be used to repair it if you leave or you run away. Taking 2 years of rent advance from young people who have completed school, or even from young people who are working, or even from Ghanaians generally who cannot pay is wrong. It increases the hardship in the system because a young person will work the whole year just to gather money and give to a landlord. That is very unfair. So I thought that his proposition to this problem was going to be that they're going to enforce the law as it is today. Because if you tell somebody to pay 6 months, between 1 month to 6 months, it makes quite some sense. It's quite fair and people can pay. So to leave that and say that you're going to establish something that will deduct rent from, will provide a rent to the landlord and deduct it from your salary over time. How about people who don't have jobs or people who are not in the formal sector who don't get paid a salary that you can track? Because people sell on the streets. They may not necessarily have a bank account. How will you do that? I mean, we need those details. And I must also admit that this is just the framework. We need to see the details in the major documents. So I think that the coming days will be interesting. By then, I'm sure we would have had copies of the manifesto, would have looked at it, and the other side too would have done theirs, will compare and contrast, and then we'll make decisions.
Do the comparison well. We can now go to the University of Cape Coast to our team standing by, Duke, Nathan, Sanda, Vivian, and get more analysis and hear from key persons in the NPP on this new manifesto.
Patriotic Party's manifesto launch here at the new Examination Council Hall at the University of Cape Coast. That is the NEC Hall at the University of Cape Coast. The event has just ended the very important parts of it. We've had various speakers touching on various segments of the NPP's policy that would be implemented in terms of the manifesto. The electorate should give another 4-year mandate, which the party is seeking come the 2020 election. I have with me the Member of Parliament for the Bosumtwi constituency in the Ashanti region. He's also the Deputy Minister of Education in charge of general education. His brief has generally been with implementing various reforms in the educational sector. Welcome, Dr. Oseya Odushu.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
So we'll begin with within the framework of what has been happening here at the Congress, essentially the manifesto launch, about protecting the gains. One of the biggest policy plans that has been touted by the Akufo-Addo administration is free senior high school. Bring us up to speed with the success story with regards to that.
I think that the success story of Free Senior High School should be seen within the context of individuals who have benefited and what their lives are going to be. There's a record that over the years, a number of students, even in the 1960s and 70s, there were a number of students who were passing the common entrance and we could not admit them to secondary school because of lack of facilities. Then there came a point in the history of this nation where every year we have over 100,000 students who were admitted but could not show up because they did not have the funds. So when we talk about Free Senior High School, I want all of us to look at it within the context of what it does for the individual, but what it truly does for the country. Because what has happened is that when the less privileged don't get the opportunity for secondary education, tertiary education, it's actually the nation that loses tremendously because their creative talents are not exploited by the nation for socio-economic transformation. So that's why I'm very happy that now we have almost 400,000 more students having access to secondary education or TVET education. And these are students who couldn't have had the opportunity for that kind of education. They are coming from underserved communities, first generation secondary school goers. And that's what excites me, that a vision could produce a reality that's so profound.
Okay, now let's look at some of the new things that have been mentioned in the manifesto. The manifesto that was launched here. There is the implementation of a 219 million Ghana accountability for learning outcomes projects, the Gallup project, where some 10,000 schools are being targeted. Issues of funding, educational sector policies has always been a challenge. So, I mean, the immediate question that will come to mind with such a policy that would look at 10,000 schools in terms of schools that are going to be given much more funding than the others. How is this going to be done?
Yeah, you see, one of the challenges we've had in this country is that we are not doing well with our public schools. Public schools are underachieving. And you look at it and you cringe, because that is where we find people who come from underserved communities and they need education more than us. We are at a place where our children probably can do with little. But we need these individuals in underserved communities to have opportunity for transformation, because you see, therein lies equity. If the poor has access to education, you are lifting them up. And as a result, when you have public schools that are underperforming, you need to do everything possible to make sure they get an opportunity. And that is what Gallup is about. You see, all of us have lamented over the years that our public schools are not doing well. But some are doing better than others. There are about 10,000 schools in this country where they are seriously underachieving. You go to a junior high school where everybody fails. And that is not something we need to just stand by and observe and lament. So the government is now doing something about it. The funds have already been secured, and those schools are going to have teacher training. They are going to have other interventions provided to them so that we can lift them up, so that the children growing up in those communities can also have a better opportunity, pass the BC, go to senior high school, and move up from there. So that is why the Gallup program is being implemented. The good news is that it goes beyond the promise. The money is already there. So it's just a question of implementation.
Honorable Minister, thank you very much for joining us. My question has to do with the 10,000 underperforming schools that you plan to help improve. For you, what will be the main outcomes? Are you looking out for improved enrollment, success with exams, or how many children are able to go through basic school and move on to SHS?
You have answered the question for me. It's all the above. Okay. Every one of those are being looked at. Okay. Because it's so important that when students begin their journey from KG, we have to look at that as a pipeline. Okay. You really have to make sure they have all the resources they need to move up, and move up through the system. Okay. You know, in Ghana, we famously refer to our education ladder as a pyramid in shape. Okay. What it means is that the more you go, because I mean, some stats show that if 100 children are put in basic from kindergarten
only about 38 or 40 tend to get out of the process at the end. So, I mean, it goes
in some communities even less than that.
Okay.
You've been generous with your assessment. In some communities, it's less because, you see, there are some senior high schools where they may have a 10% pass rate in terms of qualification for for university education. So if you happen to have gone to a senior high school where they are underachieving, you don't even have a 30% to 40% chance. You may have a 5% chance. But the foundation begins from the cages, and we need to do something about it. And Gallup is going to be that thing that we need to do to make sure the percentage should not be 5%, but we're talking about 40 to 50%, because they will have the foundation to move up.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
That was Dr. Say Yao Edichum, Member of Parliament for Bosumtwi, Deputy Minister of Education in charge of general education. He's been essentially bringing us up to speed with what would happen when it comes to the educational sector of the policy. So we would wrap up, and yes, yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, so that was the Honourable Member of Parliament for Bosumtwi in the Ashanti region, yes, telling us, bringing us up to speed with the educational policy of government, essentially about what has been happening with the free senior high school and the new policy, which is with regards to Gallup, that is the Ghana Accelerated Learning Opportunities project. We would be soon hosting the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, an Honourable Member of Parliament for Bekwai in the Ashanti region, and he would be telling us also what he makes of the various policy positions that have actually been presented here. First Deputy Speaker, you're welcome to our coverage of the new Patriotic Party's manifesto launch here. So, first question would be what your impressions of the program so far has been in terms of what has been put out.
So far, what I've seen is impressive. Organization is well made. Inside the conference center, all the protocols are observed. Everybody has his face mask on, and social distancing is observed. So clearly, the party is taking seriously the safety of party members who are attending this manifesto launch program. So I think I find it very progressive and impressive what has been done.
You started out in Parliament, and first position you held was ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee before becoming first Deputy Speaker of the House. There are a number of bills that have been mentioned here in the new manifesto. There's the passage of the Chieftaincy Amendment Bill, coming into effect of the legislative instrument on membership of the National Regional House of Chiefs, increase in budgetary allocation to the House of Chiefs, and customary law and lines of succession. There are some amendments also that have also been mentioned which did not see the light of day. Some of them have not been passed. Essentially, what are sometimes the difficulties that are involved with the implementation, the laying of these bills and then its implementation sometimes?
Often the challenge we have is the number of amendments that are proposed to a particular bill. As you know, once a bill is laid on the floor of the Parliament, it becomes the property of Parliament, and we are free to make as many changes as we choose. Sometimes the changes are way so many that we rather prefer to send it back to the drafters to redraft and incorporate the amendments so that concluding it becomes easier. I'll give an example of the Right to Information Bill when it came to Parliament, one of the ranking member. We proposed a 50-page amendment. There was no way we were going to be able to finish in 2 years working with that kind of document. So we asked them to return it, incorporate the amendments, and bring it back. Even with that, we couldn't complete. But the biggest challenge is the proposed amendments, because each one has to be debated and voted upon separately. And it's tedious and time-consuming. And so when there are so many amendments to be done, then it takes time. Secondly, the number of businesses on the floor of the House on any day will also affect the speed with which we're able to work on any particular bill. So you may have observed that sometimes it is for very long hours, late into the night, to be able to finish some of these things. And here I give credit to the majority leader. He really pushes us to work hard. Really pushes us to work hard. And I think that his leadership has led to the House being able to pass so many bills because he's extremely hardworking.
This week, one issue that has been very topical is the representation of the People's Amendment Act, ROPA. Very interesting. The Electoral Commission in its has told the public, or have been very vocal in the public about its difficulty in implementing it, and the fact that it has presented the instrument itself to Parliament, but the subsidiary legislation committee, which is supposed to work on it, has not done the needed work. So for them, they are absolving themselves of the blame. What challenge do you anticipate with this amendment act and its implementation?
Well, you see, the ROPAL itself, the bill, was immersed in controversy. There were very varying opinions about how it should be planned and implemented. Of course, it's complex in nature, so that is to be expected. However, in the end, Parliament decided that it will leave the implementation arrangement to the Electoral Commission to do it. The Electoral Commission, as I understand it, has drawn up the implementation program, which will be in the form of an EI. Now, if the EI has to go through all the systems, by the Supreme Court's decision, once the EI is laid properly, after 21 days it becomes law. So we have adopted a practice we call pre-laying, which is that before it is formally laid on the floor of the House, a subsidiary committee works with the particular agency and go through all the proposed bill. And all amendments are proposed, they go back and incorporate the amendments before it is formally laid. I think it is at this stage that it is now, because it had been formally laid. Whatever is contained in it cannot be changed, and after 21 days it will pass. But I'm not surprised, because there's little agreement, or there's a lot of disagreement on how it should be implemented. It is technically not about the language, it's about the policy. Some people are opposed to it, others are firmly for it. So in the end, if you can negotiate a truce, you have to debate and vote on any particular clause that is contained in it. So I'm not surprised that the committee is not able to.
Yes, on the politics of what has transpired here today, with what you have heard, with the policies and programs that have been presented to the Ghanaian people over the next 4 years, comparatively, does this manifesto have what it takes to propel the New Patriotic Party into another 10?
I believe so. We have said, and I think it is evident, that we have done extremely well with the last manifesto. If it was a paper at any level, it would be an A+ paper. So preparing a successive paper to consolidate the gains, protect what you have already achieved, means that you have to be on a higher plane. And what I've read today, the summary that was presented by the Vice President, for me, gives me hope that if we're able to implement them, as I'm sure we will take Ghana to another level.
Thank you very much. That is the Member of Parliament for Bekwai in the Ashanti region, and he is the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, bringing us up to speed with the developments with regards to some of the law areas of legislation, as well as areas of politics and the difficulty. So, okay.
The two of us can do it's better because we don't have a lot of time.
Okay. So I've been joined by the Deputy campaign manager for the 2020 campaign of the New Patriotic Party, who is also the Minister for Inner City and Zongo Development. He would tell us about what has. Yes, he would tell us about what has gone on today. I've also been joined by Madam Oboshi Sai Kofi, who was very key in putting together the manifesto and the preparation and the work itself here. So, Madam, first and foremost, the question I would ask is looking at how the program was envisaged and how it has turned out to be. Have your expectations been met?
Thank you for having me. My expectations were very high, and I think we achieved quite a high percentage. I think getting towards the end, the excitement took over a few people, and I saw the social distancing rules were not being met, and some of the COVID protocol safety measures were slightly dropping at the end. But for the majority of the time, I think we did exceedingly well.
Okay. So now let's look at the issues of communication, which is your forte. This is something you've done for over the years. How best should the ideas that have been put together in this manifesto be communicated to get it to the people for whom they are meant to get to?
The challenge we are going to have in this current time is how to take the major message, which is an audiovisual message or a social media message or a television and radio message, and how to get it down to our base in the rural areas and the further communities. We live in a COVID era where we cannot have rallies, for example. We cannot have big crowds. We are limited to how many people you can meet at a time. So I see the communication challenge in this particular election year as how to get the message down to the ground and to every last Ghanaian.
I'll bring in the Deputy Campaign Manager for the 2020 campaign, Honorable Abu Mustafa Hami, into this. Let's look at your sector. Let's look at your sector, that is the inner city and Zongo ministries. Within the framework of what has been presented, what are the gains that are to be protected in that sector?
Well, a lot has to be protected. In the case of the Ministry of Inner City and Zongo Development, we've been given a clear mandate by the President as, if you want, as captured in his social and economic program for 2017 to 2024. Page 116 actually mandates us to do 5 things. Number 1, improve infrastructure in education and health in Zongo communities. Actually, health, sanitation, and education, number 1. Number 2 is develop recreational facilities aimed at developing the talents of young people in Zongo communities. Number 3 is help to develop Zongo businesses and empower especially women business people to be able to earn a decent income to be able to take care of their children. And then improve security. So these are the 4 cardinal areas that we were, if you want, mandated to tackle. And if you look at all of these 4 cardinal areas, we've done tremendous in these areas. Like the Vice President said, we've built all these recreational facilities from Bolga to the coastal areas in these Zongo communities. Bolga, Yeji, Salaga, Wale, Old Tafue, Kumasi, Asawase Highlanders Park, Fadama Park, Odan Zongo, Chebi Zongo, etc., etc. All these AstroTurf facilities and sporting facilities are meant to develop the talents of these young people. And as we can see in the manifesto of 2020, beyond building the facilities, now in our next government, we intend to institute a sports development talent program within the Zongo communities, where with the aid of foreign partners and scouts, we are going to deliberately set up a Zongo Soccer League, for example, which is meant to develop and pick out young Zongo talents. And you know that in Ghana's football history, the many prominent Ghanaian people who have done our country proud have been Zongo people. All these Baba Yares and Anas Sedus and Sule Muntaris and Mohamed Gagos and the rest of them. There are many more of them there. But because there have not been facilities in these communities to unearth these talents, that has been the challenge. We've been able to tackle that. The 519 women whose businesses we supported and helped to develop are all benefiting from the COVID-19 business assistance funds. They are going to get money to improve their businesses, improve their incomes and their livelihoods, and etc., etc. As for the water projects and the school 6 classroom block projects across the Zongo communities, the ICT facilities that we have built in Zongo schools across the country to facilitate technological education in Zongo community, they are too numerous for me to mention here. So as far as I'm concerned, and mind you, this Zongo Development Fund, real setting it up and beginning happened from August 2018 when I came to the ministry. That's when I came and started the process of setting the fund. So work actually started in May 2019. So all the volume of work that you see across the country in reality has been undertaken in 1.5 years. Are you following me? And therefore, I think that tremendous work has been done and the Zongo people see and appreciate. And I believe that they will give us a mandate so that we can continue with the transformation of our Zongo community.
Coming to the 2020 campaign, this is a campaign that essentially has been framed as one that would be dependent on the records both of fiscal development and human development. How is the party approaching the election in a way that would ensure that the message put out there would be one that the electorate would buy into, or would be one that the electorate would want to enter into a social contract with the New Patriotic Party?
Well, I don't quite understand your question, but let me attempt it nonetheless. This would virtually be an accentuation of the retail campaign that we started in 2016. You know, in 2016, we designed a concept called retail politics. And by retail politics, we mean doing politics that is relevant to the local people. You get the point. Now, coming into government, that has given us a better opportunity to make this type of campaign even much easier. So, for example, right now, as I speak, there is no community in this country that you cannot point to projects and developments that have come across in these communities as a result of the NPP coming into power.
But there are 22% that's also pending per the delivery tracker. There's also 22% of projects that are pending in terms of the delivery tracker that was put out by the
but of course, there is no party in this country or perhaps anywhere on earth that can implement 100% of its manifesto commitments within a first term of government. Nobody has ever done that. We believe that even the 78% that we have done is phenomenal by world standards, not even by African or West African standards. By world standards, it is a very good performance. And we are very proud of that performance. And we believe that the Ghanaian people will give us the mandate as a result.
Madam Oboshi, what will be your comments regarding...
you know, I was told that you wanted to talk a little bit about the event itself. And as you know, I was the chairperson for the inauguration and the launch. So I thought we were coming to talk about that. So I have had a very difficult time yesterday and today, and I'm going to beg your leave and come for an interview when you come back to town.
Thank you. So that was Madam Oboshi Saikofi, Presidential Advisor on Communications, and she has been speaking to us.
Thank you.
And I'm still with...
Can you dismiss me too?
Okay. All right, so I still have with me the Honorable Mustafa Abdul Hamid. Final thoughts before we move.
Well, my final thoughts is that once our manifesto has been launched, it's basically, if you want, the trumpet that signals the beginning of real work on the ground. How we now go and sell this message to every village, every hamlet, every community in Ghana is the next series of tasks that we are going to tackle from Monday. But we are very confident that we've done our bit. The Ghanaian people will do their bit and renew our mandate on December 7th.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, the Honorable Mustafa Abdul Hamid, Minister for Zongo Development and Inner Cities, as well as the Deputy Campaign Manager for the 2020 NPP election. I still have with me Nathan Kwao. We must have a conversation regarding the policies and the things that have come up today at this manifesto launch, I must say. So, Nathan, if you can walk us through the various policies that have been presented, new policies that have been presented, beginning with education, Yes. So that is a key part of what the NPP did or campaigned on in 2016. Now, if you go through the document, there is a focus on consolidating the implementation of the free SHS and the free TVET programs. Now, that's something that the president and the vice president and the education ministry have been very loud over. They feel that there's a lot of energy that must be focused there. And so government feels that looking at what has happened in the last 3 years or so, there's the need to keep pushing, keep making that policy more accessible, more concrete, more tangible in whatever form they want to put it. They're also talking about improving the quality of education in 10,000 low-performing basic education schools across the country. And Dr. Aweduchu mentioned that he's focused on that, and we'll see how that one plays. I find that policy or that promise quite interesting, and you wonder what went into the selection of the 10,000 schools, and you have to see how that policy will play out. There's also something for the tertiary students. Remember that the allowances for trainees, nurses, teachers got restored, and the mainstream tertiary students also want a bit of financial support, and so there's the plan to provide them with some loans, and I'm sure over time we'll hear what the dynamics will be. That is, if the NPP gets to stay in office after the December 7th election. So a number of the promises are there: 24-hour dedicated learning channel and all of that. Build 16 model senior high schools in the Zongos, and the Minister for Inner City Development mentioned that, and I'm sure it will be high on his agenda and very prominent on the things he would want to do should the NPP retain power come December 7th also. So in terms of education, those are the big points. There are other things, of course, we can't go into details because of time, but those are some of the outstanding and the more striking promises that have been made or that have been captured in the manifesto looking ahead at the 2020 elections. There's also interesting promises when it comes to health. So if we can wrap up on the point of health, because the two constitute the social sector, education and health. We've looked at the education bit. Let's look at some of the things that have been spoken of in the health sector. Well, I mean, the NHIS, the NPP likes to talk a lot about the NHIS. They do enjoy talking about the NHIS, and if you go through what they have, they say that they'll be harmonizing the functions of the Health Facilities Regulatory Agency, the NHIA, the Pharmacy Council, health professionals, with respect to accreditation, licensing, and all of that. That's quite interesting. There's a focus on telemedicine to enhance health deliveries. Now, if you bring all of these things down to the very minute level, you have young girls who have faced some challenges in terms of being in school due to, for example, not having sanitary pads and sanitary towels. Now, you know, I mean, if you read the literature, if you do your analysis, if you go down to the ground, there are lots of girls who struggle with this thing that happens every month, struggle with the monthly cycle. Some of them don't even have the money to purchase the sanitary pads. Now, it puts them at risk of, one, staying away from class, and in some cases, some extreme cases, it has led them to fall prey to men who may take advantage of them because of poverty, because of the inability to purchase sanitary towels and all of that. So it's interesting hearing that the tax duty on sanitary towels will be looked at. Dr. Baumia in his presentation mentioned that the most ideal situation is to produce the sanitary towels here in the first place, but up until when we can do so, and I quote him, up until when we can do so in the required numbers, would have to reduce the import levy and allow more importation to go in, which by extension will help some of these girls deal with the monthly occurrence of their menstrual cycle so they can be in class. And like I said, if you follow work that NGOs have done, they highlight these two things. Because of that, some girls cannot go to school, and because of the fact that there's poverty, some girls find themselves in very difficult situations where if somebody has money to give them to buy a sanitary towel, there's some kind of exchange, and most of the time it is not really healthy for our young girls, our nieces, nephews, and cousins, younger sisters, and all of that. So those are some of the things that have been mentioned here. Of course, there's a construction of 100-bed hospitals all over in districts, 6 new regional hospitals in the 6 new regions, a Ghana Center for Disease Control, a new regional hospital for the Western region. So those are things that we've heard. Those are things that some projects have already seen, some commissioning, groundwork, and all of that. Some Some of them are on paper and yet to be implemented. So you can tell that that's what the government wants to do. Should it be giving the next 4 years under Nana Akufo-Addo? Interesting promises. And of course, I'm sure as the campaign goes on and it goes by, the various questions will be asked with regards to the feasibility, the funding, and any other sectors that we should. Well, if you go through infrastructure, for example, government says over the next 4 years it will strengthen the capacity of the development authorities. Remember that they set up various development authorities, coastal, middle, and northing, and all of that. And there's also the Zongo Development Fund that would help develop all these places. They want to talk about the completion of the Yendi, Tamale, and Damongo water supply projects. Now, I remember the president was in that part of Ghana a few weeks ago. I think it was in Yape, where he was also commissioning water projects and all of that. The Wager Dam Rehabilitation Project is also on the government's plate ahead of the election and ahead of the second term. So those are some of the things: railways, ports, harbors, and all of that. If you even look at housing, for example, they want to expand the state housing company's capacity to provide more affordable housing for Ghanaian workers and families. So those are the things that are there. Now, one promise that is here that I find really interesting, we'll get to the rent bit. In the 2016 manifesto, the NPP said they were going to create land banks and deal with the district assemblies so that there could be spaces for landowners to build. That promise has repeated itself in this manifesto. So clearly it wasn't done, or it wasn't looked at closely, and there's that determination to look at it again should government get another 4-year term. You mentioned rent, and yes, Dr. Bawumia said that they will be working with landlords to pay directly to their bank account. There's a 100 million cedi scheme, or so. I think I must have gotten the currency wrong, but there's a scheme, or there will be a scheme to help, especially in that, because it's a major headache for a lot of young people, who are, even for older people who are trying to get a place to stay. Rent is a major headache. So we'll see what the government will do in terms of rent, but it has highlighted the fact that it wants to deal directly with landlords. It wants to help create affordable housing so people can have very decent places to lay their heads each and every day when they close from work. So it's been an interesting day here with the launch of the NPP's manifesto at the new examination council, that's NEC Hall at the University of Cape Coast. We would soon be crossing over back to our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka, Accra, for TV and radio coverage to begin. But before we cross over, Nathan, what will be your concluding thoughts on what has happened here today? Well, it's been a very interesting ceremony. For me, one of the striking things was to hear from some sector ministers, either substantive ministers or head ministers or deputies, going over the things they had done. I did not expect that at all. I thought that we would have a brief presentation, possibly by the vice president, and then the manifesto would be launched officially. But it looks like government decided to run people through, though some supporters showed up. But for me, just having sector ministers show up and go over the things they have done, all in a bit to court more support from the voter or the potential voter or the new voter. For me, I found it quite interesting as an addition to the program. But it's been good, it's been fun, it's been interesting. I think they stayed largely within time, and it's come off quite well. So that is Nathan Kwao, head of research at City FM and City TV. We would be crossing over to our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabakra, Accra, where Abna Owusu Nyamiche, Godfred Akotobo, Afuselo Madonu, Fentio Tahiru, and Sixtus Don Olo would be taking over our coverage here, right here from the UCC, that's the University of Cape Coast New Examination Center, NEC, or where the launch of the new Patriotic Party's manifesto is actually transpired all through this morning from about 9 o'clock to about 9 now, just a little, so some 43 minutes past 3 p.m. Yes, and that's how we would wrap up our coverage here from the grounds, from our makeshift studio on the grounds here at the University of Cape Coast. And we would cross over now to our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin, for television programming and radio programming to proceed.
We're back in the studio. Duke and Nathan there speaking to a number of people in the NPP, of course. They launched their manifesto a while ago. So we're just going to wrap up quickly on some of the key things we picked up during the presentation and also what President Akufo-Addo said. Selom, before we went to Cape Coast, we were touching on the issues of education and health and also the new scheme for rent that is seeking to support young people, especially in the words of the Vice President, assisting them to rent in the capital or any other. We know that 100 million Ghana cedis will be committed to that particular scheme for that. But aside that, Selom, which other things struck you?
Well, I think they mentioned the creative arts sector as well. A number of things were said about the creative arts sector. The fact that they're going to set up recording studios in Accra, Kumasi, and Takoradi also to help budding artists get opportunity to record their music and things like that. Quite laudable. But since it's a manifesto thing and it's an accountability thing, I just want to quickly go to what they promised in their 2016 manifesto, upon which they were given the mandate and what they did in respect of that. In terms of the creative arts, a number of things they promised. So we saw Baumia talking about the Creative Arts Fund. Yeah. You know, in 2016, it's here as well. Establish a Creative Arts Fund to make available funds to modernize and develop the sector. So that is been recycled into the 2020 document. What happened to it? We were not told why it wasn't achieved. Maybe the main document or the bigger document will make us know. Something happened about a month ago. That is the Chief Justice designating a court called the Creative Arts Court to help adjudicate on matters of the creative arts industry, like copyright issues, etc. So they promised it.
That was in the 2016 document.
Yeah, so create a division of the High Court focusing on the creative arts to deal with matters relating to intellectual property rights, complete with a dedicated system, dedicated enforcement unit, etc. Also establish a Creative Arts Council to coordinate and harmonize the various interests and fragmented associations. That has also been done. So the court has been set up, albeit just recently, but you can tick that box as having been achieved. Creative Arts Council, I think that's what Makroku Mante chairs. A number of other things as well. So pursue the construction of modern, large sitting theatres in every regional capital except Accra, beginning with Takoradi, Tamale, and Kumasi. You know, as well as setting up an additional copyright office in Tamale to cater for the northern sector, in addition to the existing ones in Accra and Takoradi. When you look at this, for example, I don't think it's been achieved. They promised building a theater in each region. So now we're looking at maybe 10 theaters or even 16 theaters. But I'll put it at 10 because the regions were 10 at the time they were making this promise. So 10 regional theaters. I don't know if, apart from Accra, so 9 theaters. I don't know if they've delivered on even one.
They said the Kumasi one is under construction. Per that presentation the Vice President gave on Tuesday.
At what stage can we say it is? Because one thing politicians do is to tell you that there are various levels of completion. What stage really is it? Granted, the Kumasi one is being built. How about the other 8? You know, so if out of 10 or 9 you have built one, I mean, on the scale of 1 to 10, that's 1 out of 10. That's 10%. As far as this particular promise is concerned, what happens to the Copyright Office promise also to be built in Tamale? This is their own document. I'm not making this up. So also we have promote regional and district literature, music, dance, etc. I mean, that one you can't really quantify it. So, you know, a number of promises made in this particular sector, but it appears that we've not seen a lot in the past 3.5 years. But they are hoping to have a renewed mandate to see whether they can make up for maybe the lost time in respect of this. So let's see what the details will be, and let's see what the other sides will have. So we compare and contrast and see where the balance will tilt.
The Vice President mentioned a transport sector recapitalization project, and one of the key things under that project is that commercial bus drivers, the churchill, as we know, you can exchange your old churchill for a new one, and then you'll be paying it in a gradual process. And these will be from the cars that are being assembled here. As we know, he mentioned Kantanka, the VW and all that. Will this actually work?
Well, I mean, anything to help alleviate the plight of the people is great. I don't have enough basis to say that it won't work. I mean, the same way they talked about free SHS, some people thought it was not feasible. Today we have free SHS. Albeit there are one or two things that need to be strengthened. But you don't always have a perfect system. So what is important is you work at it whilst you go. So yes, it looks like a very laudable plan. One that maybe the commercial drivers will want to jump on. But we, again, need to understand the mechanics of it. How is it going to be done? Must you make a down payment of how much before you are giving what type of car? You know, we need to understand that. But it appears the state will be heavily involved in this. And, I mean, to people who are critics of big government and government having its feet and its hands in everything, I wonder what they will say about this. But again, everything to help alleviate the plight of people and improve their socioeconomic status. And for it, we only hope that it will be done in a manner that will be fair, that will be transparent, that will see the generality of Ghanaians benefiting.
As we go along in our build-up to election 2020, there will be more analysis of the NPP's manifesto. Of course, we're going to study that document in detail and bring you analysis. And when other parties also bring theirs, we'll make a better comparison to inform your decision for the December polls. But the president also spoke at that event. And Selom, I want your comments on the general outlook of the president and his message. Today, he was rather focused on John Mahama. In times past, it has been Dr. Bawumia hitting at the former president and telling him all the things he was unable to do and why Ghanaians should not vote for him. But today, we had Nana Akufo-Addo doing that job himself.
Yes, because Bawumia was given a different task today, a task which is a bit more technical. So his job was to deliver the manifesto, which he did quite well. The president's speech only told me what the focus of the next election, or what the focus of the election will be, actually. So, free SHS. I said earlier that the manifesto as presented by Bawumia lacked a certain level of excitement, an excitement level we saw in 2016. And I explained that it's because maybe they are in power. So if you are in power, you can't say things just to excite people, because when you say excitable things, the next question is, why are you not doing it now that you have the power? So, and a lot of the things they've said are geared towards consolidating what they've achieved already and developing extra legs to them. So those things may not sound very exciting, but they are also still the real jobs to do. You know, so the president spoke about the free SHS, which is a big program, the flagship of the campaign of the government. When you look at the EC data, about 1.3 million people will be voting for the first time this year, and a good chunk of these people either benefit or are beneficiaries of the free SHS, because I mean you finish SHS around between 17 to 19, and this 1.3 million people are aged 18 and 19 years. So a huge chunk of these people come from this program. But whether the mere fact of these people having gone through the free SHS system is enough to make them vote for the NPP is another matter, because I know of people who come from maybe NDC homes. So even no matter what you do for them, their background naturally is NDC. And given that people have raised one or two concerns about the free SHS policy, I'm not sure it's going to be a direct translation of votes of these people. But you know, it's clear that the free SHS policy has been quite effective. They certainly will get some votes from people, especially people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to go to school, and parents who otherwise wouldn't have been able to send their kids to school. Those people will see this program as a very important one and will not want anything to happen to it. And if you realize what the president was trying to say, he was trying to say that John Mahama says he will review the program. And for him, review meant cancellation, which really is not the case in English. But this is politics. So he said Mahama says he will review it, but that review means cancellation. Sending a message to the people who wouldn't have been able to send their kids to school or wouldn't have been able to attend SHS if the free SHS hadn't come, that if this guy comes, he will cancel it. So he's not a guy you are supposed to be.
Because in 2016, he said it wasn't possible.
Exactly. His government or his team at the time said that it was not very feasible now. So what was feasible and what was required at the time was what they called a progressive free SHS. So that message, I think, was sent clearly. He also, you know, what I think he also sought to do was to give his political communicators, party communicators, lines to use when they find themselves in very tight corners or difficult debates, or generally when they are on air. So, for example, he says that the NDC has no manifesto, even though they were first to elect their flag bearer till date. They have no manifesto, which is an inference to suggest that the NDC has no plan. But of course, the NDC has said when they want to launch their manifesto, they appear to have a plan. But it just so happens that the NPP launched its own first, and then now it's become something that the party communicators can be saying. So the NDC does this, and the more you repeat these things to people, the more they tend to believe it. You know, so I thought he was trying to give lines to his people.
I think John Boydu also did say that the general secretary they are not ready, so they are free to copy. They can do that if they so wish to. So these are the political lines we think people can use. So, for example, this thing about Ghanaians having short memory, etc., and he latched on that and tried to list a litany of things which he thought Ghanaians should not forget. That was also giving his political communicators something to talk about. He tried to also attack the credibility of Mahama when it came to the free SHS, that by saying that he did not believe in it, his people did not believe in it. So when it comes to this, then his credibility is zero. He's not the guy to take this to the next level. So you can see that a lot of the things he's been saying were hinged on the free SHS. So the free SHS is going to be a huge part of this campaign. Make no mistake, very huge part of this campaign. There are other achievements, like one constituency, one ambulance, that really did not show up, you know, because even though there are things people see, but if you are not sick, you don't get to use an ambulance, even though you need a good ambulance system so that should the unexpected happen, you know you can be well taken care of. But that is not something that affects people every day, like the free SHS, etc. So basically, I thought his speech was to set the political tone, to unveil or to take the veil off his political opponent in a certain way, so that he frames the discussion in a way that will make him favorable. And if his communicators are sharp, they jump on it and then do damage to the opponent. So basically, that is what has been done. The manifesto itself appears technical. Lines, very difficult to get lines from it you can use easily, but a lot will depend on their communicators. They really need to sit down, understand this, and fashion a way that they can reach the people with, which will be very easy to assimilate and appreciate. One of the things the president said in response to John Mahama was when recently Mahama said it's not that the country is not doing well because of COVID-19, or it's not that people are suffering because of COVID-19. The reason is, according to John Mahama, that there are bad managers of the economy and they are in charge of the economy now. And the president says, no, that is not the case, because you cannot be a better manager of the economy. The NDC cannot be a better manager of the economy compared to the NPP. How much of a role will this COVID-19 and everything play in the campaign period?
Well, once there's a crisis, leadership must rise to the occasion. So when leadership fails to deliver, everybody knows that Akufo-Addo did not bring COVID. Everybody also knows that John Mahama did not cause doomsor. But the doomsor affected John Mahama because, you know, he struggled in the process. Indeed, the doomsor problem was not one that you could solve in a month or two, because it was a structural problem. You had to, you know, build dams, you had to procure generators, you had to procure plants, and it takes months and years to do. So it took quite a number of years for him to do that. And the situation fettered, the situation grew worse. The effect on the economy was bad. So he had to be punished for it. So the same way, the crisis of COVID, not just Ghana, across the world. So if the government eventually doesn't manage it well, it will bite it. People have lost jobs as a result of COVID. I'm not sure that people think that Akufo-Addo made them lose jobs, even though it's COVID. But after a while, if they are not able to find job and get back on their feet and live life they want to live it, they will blame Akufo-Addo for it. That is how it works. So it's important that he takes the bull by the horn and he does what he has to do to ensure the economy gets on its feet quickly, so that he doesn't suffer for it. But if he doesn't play it well, surely he will suffer for it.
Have to suffer for it.
They also promised to build a harbour at Cape Coast, and then an airport in Cape Coast. I thought that was huge, because people thought that Cape Coast is just in the corner. You know, 1.5 hours from Accra, you are there. 1 hour from Takoradi, you are there. But hey, let's see. I was even saying that by the time you fly out of Accra by the time you settle in the air, then you just be
like 15 minutes.
You just be descending. So maybe if it takes 30, 40 minutes to get to Takrady, then you need like 15 minutes to fly to Cape Coast. But let's see how it goes. There's an airport in Ho, but we don't appear to have use for it now. So
we'll see how that goes. But thank you very much, Selo Madunu. Thank you too for watching our coverage from the morning till date from all of us here at City TV. We are glad you joined us. My name is Abnanya Mechampedu. There will be more on the NPP's Manifesto launch this evening on the City Newsroom at 8 p.m. Thank you for watching. Do have a great day.